This is How About That Podcast, a show dedicated to all things Dallas Cowboys. With both objective and subjective perspectives, How About That Podcast is your place to hear about America's team. Now, here's Joseph Hoyt and Danny Morales.
All right, I'd like to invoke a feeling from the song Break Even by The Script. I'm still alive, but after 3 days of the draft, I'm barely breathing. That was a lot. That was fun. A lot happened, Danny and Joey. Everyone, welcome to How About That Podcast. We're recording on Sunday. We slept in a little bit. Well, Danny didn't. He's got a...
Speak for yourself.
I was going to say, the West Coaster's got 18 he's got to get to. He's wearing his back of the cup hat for those listening and not watching. So he's apparently, trying to manifest something that he doesn't do very often.
Well, I'm trying to work on my short game today. It's a 9-hole par 3. We're playing the Cliffs over at the Olympic Club. So shout out to the Olympic Club in Daly City.
Yeah, a little snazzy little place there for those not familiar with the West Coast golf scene.
Yeah, you got to know some people to get in there. I myself am not a member, nor can I afford to be one, but I know people that are.
See, Morales knows people, and he also knows things about the Cowboys, and which is why he's on this pod. Joey, how are you doing really quickly before we dive into Cowboy stuff?
It's been a weekend, to say the least. Not a ton of sleep, a lot of writing, but I don't know. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed covering everything and just seeing the chaos that ensued.
Have you emotionally recovered from the fact that Ladd McConkey was not a first-round pick?
From the fact that Ladd McConkey went to maybe the best situation he could have in the Los Angeles Chargers, and he's going to seamlessly take over for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams as the go-to option in that offense.
That was such a politician's response. This was the biggest Ladd McConkey truther saying he'll go night one. He's a first rounder, guaranteed.
What was it, number 4? He said he's going to be the fourth.
Okay, whoa.
Yeah.
Hang on.
You even said the Chiefs would take him over Xavier Worthy, which I said, you really think Mahomes would want to throw to McConkey over Worthy? Patrick Mahomes and Danny Morales prevail. Sorry, Joey.
I never said he was going to go fourth. I said there was reports that he could. I think he's the fourth best. And Joe, you thought he was a surefire thing in the first round too. It wasn't just a
You did.
What was your degree in, Joey? What was your degree in?
My degree?
Yeah.
Sports journalism.
Oh, I'm surprised it's not political science with some of these responses.
No, obviously Keenan Allen, he's not going to just slide in and grab 110 catches, whatever. I mean, maybe he's this year's Puka Nacua, but that's probably not going to happen. But he's been put in a very, very good situation at the beginning of the second round. And guys at the beginning of the second round that are wide receivers have worked out in the past pretty well. So I don't see why Ladd McConkey couldn't.
Well, you brought up Puka Nacua. Danny, you want to get one last word on that before we move on?
Yeah, just one more jab at Joey. If we go back to a couple episodes ago, I also remember saying that Keon Coleman would be going before Ladd McConkey, which you thought was blasphemy. No way. No, McConkey's better. I was like, hey, okay.
I told you why I think it's blasphemy. I think he just reminds me too much of N'Keal Harry, which, hits a couple heartstrings just a little harder than the average prospect comparison. Maybe he's not that much like N'Keal Harry, and despite his lack of speed, he can really separate in the air and do some stuff. But
did you see his interview, his presser about buying coats 2 seasons ahead?
Dude, great advice, honestly, and it's something that for a guy from South Louisiana, South New Orleans kind of area, to have that type of know-how about the coat scene, I think that's give me more IQ points. It's not a shock then he got taken over Ladd McConkey.
No. Total side note, I was always a Ray Davis fan. No idea he's from San Francisco.
I know. Yeah.
Super cool. Did not know that.
Yeah. He also a West Coast guy. Joe, you brought up Puka Nacua. The Cowboys drafted his first cousin, believe it or not. Talk about a segue there. Before we get into the Cowboys draft, though, let's talk about someone, or specifically a position that wasn't drafted. And that was running back, which entering the draft, Danny, how shocked would you have been or what would be your reaction if I would have told you on Monday of last week, hey, the Cowboys are not going to draft a running back. They'll even agree to terms with one undrafted guy who probably, is not going to stop them from adding another running back via free agency.
I wouldn't have believed you if that's what you told me. We saw all the mocks of Jonathan Brooks. Jerry Jones came out and was very open about his love for Jonathan Brooks. I would have been okay with him in the second round, but especially when they picked up that extra third, I thought for sure they're going to pick up a running back. And then when they don't, and seeing all the running backs left on the board, but knowing they don't pick for 100 more picks, I knew it was a long shot that they would make it to the fifth round. And sure enough, the running backs were flying off the board, pick after pick after pick. And I think the last one left to go was Audric Estime. And then when he went, that was like a shot to the heart. There was really nobody left. And then Ali goes, Tyrone Tracy goes to the Giants of all places. And it kind of left me like scratching my head, like, what are we doing? Did we not want to trade up? Do we not value any of these running backs? Do they really view Zeke as a starter? Do they like Rico Dowdle more than we think? From an outsider's perspective, it doesn't make sense to me. You had a ton of running backs on the board. So many teams were moving up in the draft. The Cowboys didn't. In fact, they went back to get more capital and still didn't move back up to get the running back. So they clearly view their running back room different than the rest of the world somehow. I don't understand. It's puzzling. Zeke's not the answer, and no.
I think it's ironic too that the Cowboys, by not selecting a running back, in my opinion, and the way they're handling the running back position, it's a clear sign that they added a whole new analytics department last season, right? It's a clear sign that they recognize that the devaluing of the running back position, right? Hey, we're going to load up the offensive line. We could put Jerry Jones himself back there, and he could get us 4 yards a carry if we have the right O line. And I think it's ironic that you go back to 2016, they used the 4th overall pick on a running back, and they valued it very highly. Then they re-signed him to a fat deal and ultimately paid, took an $11 million cap hit to say, go away. And now that guy might be the answer to the running back situation again, that same player.
It's all coming full circle. I don't know how much they think Zeke has left in the tank. I do agree with the fact that a good running back is not a whole lot without a good O-line. But to completely punt on the position, I like the fact that they built up the wall up front. That's huge. That's great. But to completely punt on the running back position in the draft is really puzzling to me. If they were to start next week, would it be Rico Dowdle as your number one?
That's what I would imagine. Yeah. And I think they like Rico. I think that they believe that there's more room to grow. And to your point, last season, if you don't have a good offensive line in terms of run blocking, it doesn't really matter who's back there. I thought Tony Pollard at the end of last season was running hard. I think if you watch Rico Dowdle all last season, he was running very hard. He averaged over 4 yards a carry last season. And a lot of those 4 yards were because of missed tackles forced and yards after contact. So maybe in your mind you said, hey, if our starting running back is making $1.25 million, averaging 4 yards a carry, and we just have to increase the workload, but also have a committee around him, maybe not the worst decision in the world. But let's talk a little bit about the idea of bringing Zeke back specifically. This is something that's been kind of talked about a little bit for over a month now. It gained more steam when Zeke and his representation were visiting with the Cowboys the night before the draft. You think, they had a couple beers, as Stephen Jones said. They kind of chopped it up. But there was always a little coyness to it when they answered it after night one. And no one really expected the Cowboys to take a running back in night one. So that was kind of intriguing. But it left the question of, are they actually not going to take a running back? And is that their plan? They kind of left that door open. And that door got wider and wider and wider as the last 2 days went. Now, Zeke seems to be the logical path for rounding out their running back room, which, is interesting. He's got a $6 million cap hit right now for this season. That's something that they had going into free agency. That was $6 million that they could not attribute to somewhere else. maybe if you have that $6 million, you can go out and re-sign Stephon Gilmore, which I don't think is, probably going to happen anymore. But these are things you could have done with that 6 million. You could have got another linebacker. You could have got another receiver in free agency, another
Could have
defensive.
brought Jonathan Hankins. Could have brought him back.
Yeah. So, but now you're thinking about bringing them back again, which is just very interesting. It's only my first year covering them, Danny, and I'm already starting to get really cynical about things said in press conferences with Jerry Jones. And so I'm wondering, are they actually going to do it? But this was the most wink, wink, nudge, nudge element of the entire weekend. And now I feel like we're just kind of waiting for that shoe to drop.
Yeah, I think it's not a if at this point. It's just when it's going to happen. And I'm not a big believer in this whole running back by committee. The Cowboys teams of the past didn't really have it. When they were good, DeMarco was the guy. He was the bell cow. When Zeke was in his prime, keyword in his prime, which he is clearly no longer in, he was the lead back. So I don't really agree with this whole philosophy they're going at. They're just throwing bodies at the position. They've clearly, like you said, devalued the running back room. And I'm also curious, going back to the draft, if them seeing Jonathan Brooks come off the board much earlier than many people anticipated kind of threw a wrench in their plans, and that was their oh shit like pivot moment. Like, our guy, if that was their plan in round 2 all along, now that he's gone, what do we do? Do we just completely punt on it? Was it all in for Jonathan Brooks, and if not him, then no one? That kind of surprised me. I think that might have been kind of their oh shit moment in the second round there.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but I kind of don't, because if that was the one running back they had circled, I wrote about this. They talk about blinking lights. If that was the one light that was blinking for them in terms of drafting running back, that's wild.
It is, but like, you're watching the draft, I'm watching the draft. Like, it doesn't take a genius to know that when 1, 2, 3 running backs start falling off the board in round 4, you have to know that when you're up in round 5, 80 picks from now, there's not going to be any left. And they had to have made the conscious decision to be okay with that.
100%. And I think
to not trade up, you're basically saying, okay, that's fine. We like our running back room enough. We don't value anyone on the board. And I think you said there's only one. I haven't looked at the undrafted class, but they only signed one so far.
Yeah, they've agreed to terms, according to Aaron Wilson of KPRC, with Nate Pete, former Stanford and Missouri running back. I think he had only 300 yards rushing last season at Missouri, but is a guy who jumped a 41-inch vert and I think ran a 4.3 something at his pro day. So obviously some talent in there in terms of just raw ability, but that's not the answer to your running back room, I don't think. Let's move on a little bit though. Danny, let's go. Let's dive into the draft picks a little bit.
Sure.
And we have to start with the guy that you projected from the beginning. While Joey's out here making Lad McConkey takes, Danny says, when you guys pick Tyler Guyton, or when the Cowboys pick Tyler Guyton, I'm going to be here to tell you I told you so. Well, Danny, congratulations. Not only did the Cowboys land Tyler Guyton, they were able to also acquire an extra third-round pick, which they were able to use later, but we're going to talk about that more later. Danny, at 29th overall, they took Tyler Guyton. 1, what was your reaction? And 2, are you ready to tell Joey I told you so?
Well, I'll just start this whole thing with saying I told you so. Going back to our first episode in Chase for the Rose, when he should have never lost to Amarius Mims in the first place, I told you so. So he's a Cowboy. Number 60's coming to Big D. But I was pumped. Night 1, I think they played their cards perfect. I've said the ideal scenario was to go from 24 and get back in the late 20s or 30, 31, something like that. Pick up, I thought, like a 4th, but the fact that they got a 3rd, perfect. And then they get Tyler Guyton, who may or may not have been their guy at 24 regardless, I think is an absolute slam dunk. So I was leaving the first night of the draft. Kudos to the front office. They haven't done anything all offseason, but they finally got something right. Yes, he played right tackle at Oklahoma, but he's got the skills, he's got the size, he's got the traits. He's a little raw. Like, even myself as a Tyler Guyton truther, I can admit that he's got some flaws in his game. But so did Tyron Smith, the guy he's replacing. He wasn't a finished product coming out of USC. So I'll take those tools. I'll bet on those all day. And I feel pretty good with lining him up at left tackle to start our year. Great night.
I just
Great
want
pick.
I just want to say really quick, there's a reason Armarius Mims wasn't available at 24 or 29.
I wouldn't have wanted him anyway. Keep him.
I know you wouldn't have.
Where'd he go? Cincinnati?
18, Cincinnati.
Yeah, have fun with him. We don't need him.
Danny, as the pulse of the fan on this podcast, another thing I kind of want to ask you just as a reporter, and I'm curious, this offseason, I think in your words, has been the most depressing and disappointing offseason the
Yes.
Cowboys have had since you're in your 30 years of fanhood. How important I think was it on night one to not only get a guy that filled a position of need with high upside, but also to kind of have a shrewd move like moving back like they did, still land that guy. It felt like it was a very needed respite from the all-in drama and depressing nature of this offseason. Am I right?
It was. It was a nice, like, little glimmer of hope when all hope was lost this offseason, when I was going to fold it in and go get my Texans jersey. They just reeled me back in like they do every year. And they showed a little bit of competence in the front office, which has been severely lacking all offseason. So I love the move. I love what they did. There's other moves they made in the draft that are a little more questionable, but in terms of night one, picking up an extra third, getting your guy, I loved it. I couldn't have drawn it up any better. Would I have preferred Graham Barton at 24? Maybe, but he's not going to fill your need at left tackle. And the fact that they, which we'll touch on later, they get another guy who I love even more on the interior. Perfect. Well played.
Yeah, I think one thing about Tyler Guyton replacing Tyron Smith, which I think is funny, is that Tyron Smith was a right tackle too that made the move to left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Also super athletic, high upside. Now they get Tyler Guyton. One thing that I asked Tyler Guyton in the press conference the next day, the Cowboys have had a lot of success with first-round offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, is that sort of – and if you look at his locker, he's going to be right next to Zach Martin, future Hall of Famer, right?
Perfect.
I asked him, like, is that a standard that motivates you, knowing what has come before you in terms of first-round offensive linemen, what they've invested in terms of offensive linemen, and now they're investing in you? And he said, yeah, of course that's the motivation. And he said, that's a standard I'm not only hoping to reach, I'm planning on reaching. A couple other highlights from Guyton's first day. He comes from a family of diehard Cowboys fans, and that was pretty obvious, not only the night they picked him, but the next day. His dad, Alvin, who, by the way, was a combo guard at Midwestern State, so that's where the basketball, ability kind of comes. Alvin, by the way, still 6'4", looks like he could play. He said that the coaches in high school, when he was at Austin LBJ High School, tried to make him a safety. They said, hey, you come out and play football. He said no, unlike his son would eventually do. And I'm telling you, man, he looks like he's come play safety today. So, if Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker go down, maybe they call Alvin Guyton. I don't know. But diehard Cowboys fan. Last year, he went to a Cowboys game. Guyton, being an Oklahoma guy, was able to get them on the field after the game. And Alvin was able to kiss the star at midfield, which is, something he always wanted to do. It was a bucket list thing. Fast forward to Friday. He's laying on the star at the practice facility with his son, he's wearing his new 60 Guyton jersey. His entire family and friends had Guyton jerseys, 60 already ready to go. What a cool just anecdote for the fact that a Cowboys fan actually was able to live his dream and get picked by the Cowboys. Danny, I know you're a Cowboys fan. One, what is your reaction to just kind of hearing that and just seeing how excited Guyton and his family were? But also, Danny, if you were ever picked as an offensive lineman for the Cowboys, what would that feel like?
Well, I think motivation goes a long way. And long shot, I'm 5'8". I'm not getting drafted by any NFL team. But like I said, I think motivation goes a long way. If you've always wanted to be a Cowboys fan, if be on the Cowboys, your family's Cowboy fans, it runs deep. I think you have that extra little motivation. It's just the stars lined up, no pun intended there. And it was meant to be. And so we get our guy. He's pumped. His family's pumped. He's motivated. He's got Zach Martin right next to him to coach him up, show him the ways, tell him how to be a real pro. I'm pumped. I think that was our hugest area of need. Sorry, Chuma Edoga. You're probably not going to play all year. And we're looking good on that left side. Tyler to Tyler, we're locked up for 10 years at least. So we're looking good.
As Mike McCarthy said it. By the way, if you haven't seen the night one press conference from the Cowboys, I created a video compilation of things they said with some kind of whimsical, quirky
Yeah.
music kind of in the background. Wild press conference. One thing that Mike McCarthy said, who by the way is not really known for like making a lot of jokes, but he was on one that night. It was also close to midnight. They had another draft ahead of him. Everyone was a little delirious, but he called the combination of Tyler Smith and Tyler Guyton TNT on that left side. So that's a dynamite tandem, I think, that the Cowboys have moving forward, and I think that they're excited about it.
TNT. I like that. Dynamite combo. Wow. Did you see when he got picked, he had an energy drink sitting on the floor and he just punted it and it spilled everywhere? Did you notice that?
Oh, I didn't see it. What was he drinking? We got like a fast switch, a Celsius. What was it? What do you have?
It popped up on my X or Twitter. Something. I didn't even see what the drink was, but I think it was Tyler Guyton. I'm pretty sure it was. He was so excited he punted his energy drink.
Yeah, he had the. I think sometimes when you cover the NFL, things repeat over and over again when you're a reporter. That people are always like, well, how do you be objective? Well, it's like, well, things just kind of happen. You've seen it before, right? I'll tell you, watching Tyler Guyton and his family tour the facility, and also just the reaction to being there and just seeing a dream truly come true, honestly, was very, very cool and refreshing for even me. I feel like that might have added even a little bit more excitement for you, Danny, to see how excited he was.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be excited about being a Cowboy? First of all, I mean, any player would be lucky to put the star on their helmet, but to see that it is genuine, it runs deep, it makes the pick feel even more right. Which, kind of off topic here, but did you see the Brian Thomas thing when they interviewed his family about how far they've come?
I respected it. Just, oh, we're from Baton Rouge.
That was classic. Shout out to his parents.
There were some great. We're going to transition after this, but really quickly, there were some wild quotes and just like moments that came both cool and wild. Joey, as a guy who grew up watching the Patriots, the kid from UCF, I think it's Javon Baker, I think is his name, or is that what his name is? Right?
Yeah.
Saying one, he had the profanity laced Instagram live video, basically saying they messed up letting me fall as far as they did. And then he gets on the conference call with the Patriots reporters, and he said that, bring your popcorn. I make people in wheelchairs stand up.
Oh, wow.
Which, to be honest with you, is like right on that like thread of like problematic, but also fire quote.
Bill Belichick, I don't think would have touched this guy with a 10-foot pole, which is just like, shows the differentiating ways in which this franchise operates now. I think it's bold, but hey, if he can live up to it, he can live up to it. But now if he doesn't deliver, he is going to be clowned for the rest of his NFL career, and probably deservedly so. Respect, like if you're gonna come out of the gate firing like that as a third, fourth round pick, and you talk like that, you better back it up.
Yeah, I think it's funny. You sometimes quotes, and I get it. They're excited, right? They just got drafted. He's pissed off and excited, so it's a kind of double combo. But I think it's always funny looking back, and it's like, I think, what did Desmond Ritter say right after he was selected? Like, I'm not leaving until I win a Super Bowl. Now he's in Arizona.
You going?
Yeah. What did Josh Rosen say? Like 31 other teams messed up, and I'm gonna make them regret it. Was it a year later that he was traded to? Wow,
I feel bad. That guy got a bad break.
Only the Cardinals messed up that year. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, where did they trade him to the next season? The first time?
Dolphins,
correct.
Dolphins.
Yeah, crazy. Another really cool moment. Did you see what the Rams did with Braden Fisk and Jared Verse?
2 teammates, pretty cool.
Yeah, 2 teammates. But did you see the draft call?
No.
Okay, if you haven't seen this, go watch it because it's so cool. So Lesney gets on the phone, says, "Hey, Braden, we trade up to 39. We're going to pick you."
Mhm.
And he's like, wait, I get to be teammates with Jared again. And he goes, it's funny you mention that. We were actually trying to have Jared be the one that called you.
Oh, that
And
would have been
he got
cool.
stuck in LA traffic, which us Californians know, not uncommon.
No.
But as they're kind of as Leslie's saying that, the camera then they had someone outside with Jared Verse coming out of the van and running into the facility. So McVay is like, hey man, we're so excited, we can't wait to watch you two go. And he goes, oh, by the way, Jared just walked in. Jared, come talk to your new teammate, Braden Fisk. And then Jared gets to talk to him on the phone, and they both start crying because of just how excited they are to not only play together, but to kind of see their dreams come true together. Really cool moment. I even get chills kind of thinking about just the idea of it.
Yeah, they had a pretty good draft overall, but that's got to be a good feeling transitioning from college to the NFL, and you have one of your best buddies. You have your running mate right there with you. So yeah, it's a cool story.
Speaking of defensive linemen, I didn't really. I was kind of preaching for a while that the Cowboys needed another DN/edge rusher. That
You
was kind
did.
of my argument for Liatu Latu. I didn't really see that then coming true in the second round, but that's what the Cowboys did. They drafted Western Michigan's Marshawn Nealon, and this was a guy that Will McClay said that they were really in on from very early on. Their area scout, Maxie's his last name. I'm kind of forgetting his first name off the top of my head, but he was a big fan of Marshawn Nealon. And then they kind of went quiet in terms of trying to talk with him. They kind of talked to him at the Senior Bowl. I think they had an informal with him at the combine, but it was very informal. And Nealon was shocked to get the call from the Cowboys, but they went that way. They saw a guy that had a motor and a tenacity that reminded them so much of DeMarcus Lawrence coming out of Boise State, both another second round pick. Now Nealon gets to learn from DeMarcus Lawrence in the same room.
I like the pick, and I remember that conversation vividly we had. You were an advocate for addressing the edge need, to which I said they don't really have a problem getting to the quarterback, which is true. But when they made that pick, I kind of looked at the position deeper, and I was like, wow, Joe was right the whole time. Surprisingly, they did need to address the position. I looked at what we had and what's been lost, and they need a few more impact bodies in that room. And so initially, I didn't really like the pick. It didn't seem to fit an area of need for me. But diving a little deeper, they need someone there. They need that next DeMarcus Lawrence replacement because he's not going to play forever. He's getting up there. Dorrance Armstrong's gone. Dante Fowler's gone. Situational pass rusher. I think Nealon brings even more than that. He's got those athletic, freaky skills. You look at his numbers at the combine. Guy tested great. Tons of production. But the energy's there. The motor, the tenacity. And he's pretty good against the run game too, which I think as we see with their linebacker pick, there was an emphasis on addressing their piss poor run game defense. And so I like the pick. I think he's going to be an impact player from day one. Is he going to start from day one? We'll see. You can have him compete with Sam Williams, but I do like that pick quite a bit.
Yeah, I think he's interesting because, and we've talked about this. Obviously, I'm not an NFL scout, but I do kind of have this vibe of I can see things where I'm like, oh, that jumped out. It factor a
Mhm.
little bit. Watching him at the combine was the first time I even heard of him, and I
Mhm.
was like, who is this guy? And it was specifically on some of the field drills, some of the bag drills he did. He moves extremely smooth for a 275 guy. He had the highest athleticism score among DNs at the combine, according to Next Gen
Mhm.
Stats, more than Dallas Turner, more than Chop Robinson.
Yep.
But this is a guy they're bringing in to really address the run defense need. And I think if you kind of look at what they lost, so they lost Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong both to Washington. I think this is more of your Dorrance Armstrong replacement, and eventually maybe your replacement for DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yes.
I think, yeah, Nealon competes with Chauncey Golston, right? That's who you're going to really have. Or, honestly, you just need a rotation D-line anyways. And I think Sam Williams, you kind of hope can take the next step as your Dante Fowler situational pass rusher a little
Yep.
bit more.
No, I agree with that. I think he has more of that size to put his hand in the dirt, which I believe he did mostly Western Michigan, right? He was more of a
Yeah.
3 to a 5 technique.
Yeah.
He's
True
kind of got
deep,
that.
not edge, not stand-up edge kind of guy.
Yeah, which I like because if they would have gone situational pass rusher, more of a speed win guy, That wouldn't have made a ton of sense to me because that doesn't help your run defense. So the fact that you land someone that can do both, can get on the field from day one. One of the things I said on the earlier episodes is if they can come out of this draft with 3 starters, their first 3 picks, that's a home run. They for sure have 2. So we'll see about Nealon. I think he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think overall that it was a pick that surprised me too, and not because I didn't think they needed it. It was more just when they picked it, to be honest with you. But this is a guy that also, and one thing you'll see throughout this draft, except for one pick, in my opinion, they drafted guys that were ranked higher than where they went.
Yep.
So they had value picks kind of across the board. Nealon was another example. This was a guy people were talking about as a late first rounder by the end of the draft cycle. So very interesting pick. More on his story on Lone Star Live. You should check that out.
This one was a little scary for me because I wasn't watching the draft. I was actually driving home from Sacramento, and I had NFL radio on, and so I couldn't really see what was going on. And I forgot who the commentator was. Like it was Lombardi or somebody, but he had seen who the pick was before it was announced, and he's like, "Oh, that's who they're going to take. Not really an area of need by the Cowboys here." And they kept throwing out this Spencer Rattler garbage rumor as if like the Cowboys were going to take him. And I was like, no effing way. Like if they take Spencer Rattler here in the 2nd round, luckily it was Marshawn Nealon. So crisis averted, but very scary moment.
Yeah, no QBs taken by the Cowboys either. No
Love it.
QBs undrafted free agents either. So they're probably going to go into the next season without any QBs on their roster for 2025. Very interesting. Unless they sign Dak, which,
Yeah.
again, we'll talk more about that later. Not today, another day. But let's move on to my favorite pick they had in this entire draft. And Danny, I think if we could have done a chase for the rose in terms of just like players in general, like in terms of just like likability, not going in the first round, Cooper Beebe might have been high up there for both of us.
He might have gotten my rose. Like he is like that old school, nasty, hog molly guard, just down and dirty beefcake, just road grader. I can go on and on with all these words. But he is like exactly what I would want in a guard. Exactly what I would want. And I think he's going to play center. That's the move. I don't think he took a single snap at center in college. Am I correct?
No live snaps, but he did work at it in practice, he said. And then he's been working with Duke Manyweather, in Frisco, actually, conveniently enough, about learning the center position, knowing that was something that he would probably go to. I think he's going to come in and compete for that starting center job with Brock Hoffman, TJ Bass, some other guys. But he is just so fun to watch too. And anytime there's an offensive lineman that's fun to watch, not only was he fun to watch, Danny, he was fun to talk to. He kept saying the phrase, "I dirt people, I dirt them," and to a point where like it wasn't saying I put them in the dirt or I decleat them or blah blah blah. I love dirting people, is what he said. It's this term that I've never heard before. I think it's pretty unique to him. Even Will McClay was like, whatever the hell that means, but we love it. And then he was asked for what his favorite dirt story was. And he had this, I think it might have been a toss or something, but it was playing right guard. He pulled out left and it was against Houston. And this poor safety linebacker kind of hybrid comes in the hole. And Cooper Beebe literally just bench presses him to a point where his feet, when he's dirted, his feet are above his head.
Yeah.
Anyways, fun to watch. This is a guy, you know who else loves this pick, Danny? And you could just kind of tell from reading the room a little bit. Mike McCarthy loves this pick.
Oh yeah. How can you not? Just think about this. Think what this does for your interior run game. Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Zach Martin. Obviously, he hasn't taken a snap at center, but if he lives up to expectations, can you name a better 3 on the interior in the NFL? I mean, obviously, this is assuming that he.
I was going to say, how many interior 3s can we name across the league right now? Let's be honest.
I mean, Joey's giving me a look, but I'm just a lot of optimism here. A lot of optimism. And so I think that does a lot for our run game.
No, he's fun.
Huge pick. Joey, do you have something to say? You're looking at me like you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, what I understand you're a Cowboys fan. You get all excited, new pick. You got two great guards and Tyler Smith and Zach Martin, but we can't be appointing them as one of the best interior threes already.
I just did.
I will say, to be fair to Danny, Cooper Beebe was looked at as potentially, depending on who you talk to, it wouldn't have been me, to be honest with you, because I was a JPJ guy, but as potentially the best interior lineman in the draft. This was a 2-time All-American, a unanimous All-American this past season. Pretty good guy.
The best interior lineman in the draft. What about Fautanu? What about Graham Barton?
Depending on who you ask, no, literally, depending on who you ask, there were some people. I think Brian Baldinger literally said, "This is my favorite interior offensive line in the draft."
One more bone to pick with Danny, saying if the draft day, like he would have been one of your like Rose like draft day crush people. Everything you're describing about Cooper Beebe is exactly what Zach Frazier, who is on the bracket, embodies. I just want to point that out. Zach Frazier is like regarded as the toughest guy in this draft class. Former wrestler, West Virginia, just this super strong center that's gritty and tough and everything like that. I'm just putting that out there.
That's a good check. And like I said, like JPJ would have been my guy in the interior. Probably for me, it would have gone JPJ, Frazier, Beebe. To be honest with you, I wasn't a big Graham Barton fan. Again, not a scout here. Just that was not my cup of tea. To be honest, Danny, it's kind of ironic because like when I see Graham Barton, I don't really see that hog molly guy on the interior and he played left tackle. So to be fair, it's a little bit different out there in the
I see a little more finesse in his game. Yeah, he's got that road grader, but not Cooper Beebe. He's just the one word to describe Cooper Beebe is a hog molly. That's what he is.
That's not even one word.
It depends who you ask.
All right. Well, depends who you ask about his potential too. But I think it's gonna be really fascinating to watch how he does move to center. I think anytime there's a position change, even if it's like in theory should work out okay, even with Tyler Guyton moving from right to left, right? In theory, it should be fine. But it still has to happen. And I think that that's something we're going to be monitoring in mini camps, in training camps, in the preseason to see. But I think, to be honest, the odds-on favorite right now to be the starting center for the Dallas Cowboys is Cooper Beebe. Yeah,
no knock to Brock Hoffman, but he's not Cooper Beebe. He's not. Joey keeps giving me this look as if I'm wrong. I was right about Xavier Worthy. I was right about Ladd McConkey.
That's fair, Joey. Honestly, I know you're about to say something. I think you deserve to be put in timeout for.
I told you Tyler Guyton was the pick. You didn't want to believe me. Nobody believed me. I told you so.
We can't be appointing people with these things, with these titles.
You appointed Ladd McConkey the mayor of Hypeville, okay?
I'm saying I personally think he's the fourth best wide receiver in this draft class. But you can't be saying I told you so when they haven't stepped on the field yet. And you also
I've seen enough in college.
Beebe is Jason Kelsey 2.0 over here or something like that.
Could be. He probably will be.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Joey, one thing you got to remember: Danny Morales is an offensive lineman at heart. This is a guy that was the opposite of a hog molly and still was a all-county offensive lineman. Okay, so he knows his stuff.
Talent recognizes talent, Joey. Okay.
All right, let's move on.
Yep.
And I think one of the big phrases about the Cowboys culture in terms of roster building has been draft and develop, right?
Yes.
Draft and develop as your main strategy when you draft well. I think a big theme of this entire draft is, okay, you drafted and now you have to develop. And I think it's true with Tyler Guyton, less so with Cooper Beebe, a little bit more high floor, ready to go. I think their third round pick is another example of that. Maris Liufau, Notre Dame linebacker, who this was the one, and I like the potential that Maris has. This was the one pick where I was like, this feels like a little bit of a reach, especially knowing that this was pick 87. The Cowboys were not going to pick for another 87 picks after this. And at this point in the draft, only 3 running backs had gone. There were 3 running backs gone. By the next time the Cowboys picked, a total of 15 running backs had been taken, including South Dakota State's Isaiah Davis, who literally went to the Jets the pick before the Cowboys picked in the 5th round. So yeah. I like Maris. I think that in terms of linebackers, the one thing that he has, and I think this is maybe something you try to develop, he does have that no hesitation downhill, I'm just going to bring it, which I think is something you want to have. But also in terms of play recognition, scouts said there might be a little bit of, a little bit of some concerns there in terms of just tackling technique, a little bit of concerns there in terms of scouting stuff. Long story short, I like the pick, Danny. I don't know if I liked it at 87th overall in terms of value.
No, I'm with you. And the reason I didn't love it is for two reasons. One is because of who at the position was still there. You still had Peyton Wilson, which first round talent, but medically red flagged with, I believe he has no ACL in his left knee. Did you hear that?
That's what someone said, which to be honest with you is not that uncommon. It sounds wild, but it's not as uncommon as people think.
Okay, so maybe the Cowboys thought it was worse than it was. Maybe he was off their board completely. I don't know. I wasn't in the room. And then you also had the linebacker from North Carolina,
Cedric Gray.
Cedric Gray. So he was on the board too. So you had two linebackers ranked on most, if not every board, higher than him. That's strike one. Strike two for me is that you've shored up your O-line, you addressed your D-line. Now it's the perfect time to take your running back. You had your pretty much pick of the litter aside from Brooks, Benson, and who was the third back to go? Was it Bucky? Or
No, Bucky was a fourth rounder. It was
well, regardless, there was plenty of talent left on the board that you could have addressed the position
I
with.
think it was Jalen Wright.
Jalen Wright. I'd have to double check who was, but regardless, tons of names on the board still. Knowing that you're not going to pick again until the fifth round, the end of the fifth round, they couldn't possibly think that those running backs would make it to them. There's no way. You can't make that Maris Leofau pick hoping that a talented running back's going to fall to you 100 picks later, because there had to be a run on running backs eventually, and it bit him in the ass in the fourth round. All the running backs went. The position got completely depleted, and they were left with no options there at the position. Back to Leofau. Again, I didn't love the pick initially, but the more I looked at him, the more I think he fits that Mike Zimmer mold, where he's a better run defender, which we need, and he's an A-gap blitzer. He's a downhill runner, and so he just seems to fit the Zimmer mold, which if you throw him in the room with Overshawn, Damone Clark, I think it definitely helps your linebacker position going forward.
And another sneaky need, they needed linebackers. So,
Yeah.
But by choosing one there, you said, in my opinion, goodbye to drafting a running back. Even though there were still some guys later, you could have, I believe Rasheen Ali, a guy that they had visited, was someone in the fifth round. But in terms of guys that could potentially be your feature back, and I think, to be honest, let's save this moment in our head. If it's week 10 and the Cowboys are averaging 3 yards a carry and Dak Prescott is just trying to, pass out of this and they're struggling to run the ball and we're wondering what they're going to do in the playoffs, and Maris Leofau is only a special teams guy at that point, I think we're going to be looking at this moment as like, oh, they potentially messed up.
And I think naturally you're always going to have to compare Leofau to Peyton Wilson, who they decided to pick before him. I believe he went within the next couple of picks to Green Bay, right?
No, Pittsburgh.
He's a Steeler. So that one will hurt to see if he comes back as a Pro Bowler and Leofau doesn't. But as we stand today, I don't hate the pick. I think he's a playmaker. He brings some energy, kind of like Nealon, high energy guy, high motor. So there's going to be no lack of effort on the defensive side.
Really smart dude, too. One thing that they said is when he was on their visit, that he was able to not only explain what he did at Notre Dame, but explain the roles of every single other player on the defense on every play, which was the only reason I ever got on the field at Sarah High School, is because I could do that. So I respect it. Anyways, one really quick thing, because we got to move on a little bit. I know you got to get going, so we're going to run through the draft really quickly after this. But another thing on Peyton Wilson, if your big concern is that he's Jalen Smith and you only get 3 to 4 years of a really, 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 really talented player, which I think Peyton Wilson is, I think that's worth it in the third round, especially for a team going all in. Just a quick aside. Let's move on, though. Fifth round picks now. The Cowboys had 2 of them. Excuse me, only one. This was Kalen Carson that they selected out of Wake Forest, a corner. The one knock on Kalen Carson, never played a full season healthy at Wake Forest, which is concerning. He's going to have to prove that. He missed the Senior Bowl. too with a foot thing. He said he's fully healthy now, but he's going to have to prove that he can stay healthy. The big positive and something I wrote about, really aggressive when the ball's in the air. A lot of PBUs. He had, even though he didn't play a full season, he had at least 7 pass breakups each of the last 3 seasons. He was a 4-year starter at Wake Forest from the moment he got on campus. He only had 3 interceptions, though, including none the last 2 seasons. So that's the one concern with him. The good news for Kalen Clarkson and the Dallas Cowboys, Al Harris has been someone that people point to as, oh, he knows how to get people from pass breakups to interceptions. Obviously, if you look at Duron Bland and Trayvon Diggs, there's a little bit of risk-reward gamble, I think, that he kind of puts into his players. Maybe Kalen Clarkson can turn some of those PBUs into interceptions now, and he also can play nickel and outside.
Yeah, I like that pick. And you said he was known for being an aggressive DB with a lot of pass breakups, but not a lot of picks. I think that fits their DB room or that secondary room pretty good because you look at Duron Bland and Trayvon Diggs, 2 of the more aggressive DBs in the league. They like to take their shots. Yeah, they get burned sometimes, but I can live with that. You're going to live and die by taking those shots. And so, again, kind of one of those sneaky areas of need, not an immediate area of need, but you lose Stephon Gilmore. Maybe you expect a big step up from Eric Scott in year 2. But I think adding an extra body, especially a 4-year starter out of the ACC in the 5th round, I don't hate the pick. I like it.
Yeah, and I think depth actually I think the trio that they have, in my opinion, between Jordan Lewis, Trayvon Diggs, and Duron Bland is one of the best trios in the league. Joey, I'm waiting to see your reaction on that. No reaction. He agrees. Okay. I think one of the best trios in the league. Oh, by the way, Joey, giving you a little, crap for your reaction stuff, but I will say, as the Third Eye Raven, I absolutely appreciate your ability to check us, and you're the man. So
That's what I'm here for.
Did you say Jordan Lewis is part of that trio? Is that what you said?
yes, and I don't understand the hate for Jordan Lewis.
No, he's solid. I don't think he'll ever be a all-pro or lead the league in anything, but if you throw him in the slot, I think you can feel pretty good about the position.
What about the trio of Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and fill in the blank on the Philadelphia Eagles?
They haven't even stepped on the field, and you're going to crown them the best secondary? Come on.
Oh,
I think they're ready for their gold jackets, Danny. I don't know. What do you think?
Cooper DeJean will be out of the league in 3 years.
Whoa!
Wow.
Whoa!
He will not have his 5th-year option picked up. We will never hear from him again.
By the way,
if Cooper DeJean makes any sort of play against the Cowboys, I am clipping exactly what you just said, and you are going to get that sent to you every time he makes a play against
And then I'll clip you the Mahomes to Xavier Worthy Super Bowl ceiling touchdown.
See, it's not Lad McConkey's fault he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback.
He's got Herbert. Oh, poor him.
No, I know. Herbert's going to be great, but Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes.
all right, let's move on because we got to get going quickly. All right, let's just run through the last 3 picks really, really quick. Ryan Flournoy, wide receiver from Southeast Missouri State. Very interesting story. He was 5'3" and 99 pounds as a freshman in high school.
Jeez.
Which is, I'm trying to conceptualize what 99 pounds. It's when you see him, he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list, by the way, that's something that Danny has brought up before. His nickname was Super at Southeast Missouri State because of just what he could do in the weight room. Fun little anecdote. He said that he couldn't clean 305 when they were doing like a max, or the day before a max testing day at Southeast Missouri State. And he was so mad. The next day, he cleaned 315. And then to add it up, he real quickly after, he did 325. So Superman, very athletic guy that the Cowboys got a receiver, obviously from a smaller school. So there's, questions about that. But this is a guy I think worth taking a risk on to draft and develop. Danny, I'm going to go through the last 2 really quick, and then you just give me your thoughts. Nathan Thomas, offensive tackle from Louisiana. That was their first 7th round pick. They projected that Nate Thomas could have been a 5th round pick or even a 4th round pick on some people's boards. That's a good depth piece that maybe, Danny, just to even, ease your mind, that might be your Chuma Adoga replacement. Might be that. I think those 2 are going to compete for a swing tackle spot. And then lastly, they drafted with their final pick, Justin Rogers, defensive tackle out of Auburn. He is a big nasty, as Will McClay said. this is your Jonathan Hankins replacement. I think he was 330 at the combine, but he was 345 at Auburn. This is your plug and play. You could probably start day one at nose tackle. Mozzie Smith is going to have some competition there. And he's big. So that's what he does. He takes double teams. Yes. Danny, what are your thoughts on those last three?
Yeah, Justin Rogers is probably a buttermilk biscuit shy of 350. So I am a huge fan of that pick. I was waiting for them to address the position, and the fact that they did was such a beefcake up front. I like it. They needed it. He doesn't give you anything in the pass rush. He doesn't give you anything on passing downs. That's fine. They don't need that. That's not where their issue is. It's in the run game. So you lose Hankins, insert Justin Rogers. I'm not saying Justin Rogers, a 7th-round pick, is ever going to be Jonathan Hankins. So don't hear what I'm not saying.
I think he was a 7th-round pick too, if I remember correctly, Hankins.
Yeah, but to compare him to Jonathan Hankins as the 244th pick in the draft is setting lofty expectations. But a man of his stature could stick around the league for a long time. To be honest, I didn't know much about Flournoy before the draft. I heard him compared to as a poor man's Xavier Legette, which
he
I like.
compared, by the way, to Des Bryant. So there you go.
Okay, I like that. But yeah, whatever you can get from him, have him compete in the wide receiver room. You never know. These are your times to take shots, take flyers, take guys with the traits, with the athletic skills, the college production, and see if something sticks. Nathan Thomas out of Louisiana. Again, didn't know a ton about him either. But if you can pick up an extra swing tackle to compete with, I think Asim Richards is kind of the forgotten man here, Joe. You just alluded straight to Chuma Edoga to throw a shot at me. But I think Asim Richards is kind of the slept-on potential swing tackle here.
You should get his name right, by the way. It's Awesome Richards, FYI. So
He likes me to call him Asim. So Asim, Awesome Richards. Anyways, yeah, anytime you could bring in more competition to that room at the swing tackle position, I like it. He did look a little top heavy in the few clips that I did watch. Kind of swing and miss, likes to lunge at defenders. But a bigger body, you never know. You get him in that room, they could turn him into magic. So we'll see. I don't necessarily love those final three picks, but as 6th and 7th round flyers, what's the worst that can happen?
yeah, he also has guard versatility. I think that's actually where they're probably going to line him up first.
He has the body of a guard. He's just very burly. He doesn't have that Rosengarten dancing bear athletic build.
Yeah, he's got shorter than 34-inch arms. I think he's 33 and a half. So that's kind of something there. All right, quickly, Danny, draft grades. I'm going to go first. I give this Cowboys draft a B+. And I think what you got to do is you got to start at A+ and start kind of doing some little, demerits / subtractions. I loved ultimately how they handled the Tyler Guyton situation by trading back, getting that extra third. If the wild thing about this is if Cooper Beebe's as good as we think he is going to be, then you turn the 24th pick into 2 starting offensive linemen, which is what you wanted. Boom, boom, boom. I think the Leofau pick is kind of one of the big detractors for me in terms of not only where you could have got him specifically, but what it did from a running back situation. And I think, but that's probably it. I think they did a great job. I think that Cowboys fans should be excited with how they handled the draft.
When it comes to draft grades, it's always funny because you look back 3, 4, 5 years at some of these grades that these experts, which are great at their jobs, they give the immediate reaction the day after, and the Josh Rosen class, they get these high grades, and then you look at it, I feel like the Cowboys never really grade out well in these drafts because they take their guys, not necessarily the board's guys. They never grade out well, but their class always turns out to be great. They're very good at drafting, so I'll give them that. With that being said, just like you said, that Tyler Guyton pick to move back to 29 to get your guy, to secure him, and you get Beebe, 2 day one starters. You have the best interior O-line in the league now. Waiting for Joey's reaction. Nothing. Okay. So their first 3 picks.
So many times.
With those first 3 picks, I like where they're at. I would have liked to have get a running back, but running back by committee it is, I guess. The Leofau pick, like you said, a little head-scratching with who was still on the board and the fact they hadn't addressed running back yet. But I'm pretty optimistic just watching what he did at Notre Dame. and then their final 4 picks are kind of flyers on guys with high upside. So I'm with you. I think I go B+. If they would have got a running back instead of Leofau, that could have bumped him up to probably an A-.
And I think the fact they didn't get a running back actually could, we'll look back, that could be the big thing that bumps them, especially at that pick. But overall, I think the Cowboys fans, for the first time this offseason, have a reason to be excited.
Yeah, and I don't know if this will ever happen or not, but I keep seeing the potential of maybe a Dameon Pierce trade. Maybe that could be the answer.
Danny, they winked, nudge hard that a trade could be possible. And again, maybe that's showmanship. Shocking that, Jerry and Stephen Jones might have showmanship. But to your point, I think that's something to watch. All right, we got to get you going. You got to go play some golf. You better up your game before coming to Bend for my bachelor party in a couple weeks. So, everyone, thank you again for listening to How About That podcast. Please share, please review. Sign up for our subtext. There's information online where you can text me directly. I had a lot of fun texting with you guys throughout the draft. And tune in again soon for another episode of How About That podcast.
Thanks for listening to How About That podcast.